Welcome to today's episode of the Lance Wallnau Show, and I just wanted to say something to you. We got Mercedes Sparks with us today, and we're ready to roll. Got some crazy stuff I want to show you that came out of the World Economic Forum regarding the new scary intelligence stuff. They're really scanning your brain. They're monitoring. They're getting ready to really get under your skin and surveil everything you're doing. It's freaky, and they're celebrating it like it's some kind of a breakthrough. I'm believing right now that the only answer is going to be the Church of the Living God is going to have to push back on the darkness. You know, Jesus said that the only authorized entity on earth that could possibly handle what Davos, the World Economic Forum, and what government and frankly, the weaponized intelligence community is doing is the ecclesia. Jesus said, I will build my church and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. And I put together a message that talks about why it is that we talk about DeSantis and Trump and why we were disappointed with Kari Lake and what's going on. Because instinctively we know we've got to have people with our values at the gates of government. We have to have our voices in media. That's why you listen to Tucker or Bannon or you're listening to me right now. We have to show up. There has to be some kind of spiritually empowered righteousness to push back against the darkness. I have a product for you, a new recording done live in the electric environment of Mario Murillo's tent meeting. I went down into his tent crusade. He pushed me out there on the platform, said, no whiteboard, no podcast microphone, just preach the word of God. And I preached a message that was formed inside of me working with Kim Clement from language which he got while we were in Detroit. He called it the gathering of the dangerous. And I'm updating what Kim and I talked about. He had the prophetic, but I said it's also the government, and it's also going to be the sacred, the church, the government, and the prophetic. The three of them coming together, the sacred, the secular, and the prophetic. When the church and the government mountain and the prophetic comes to maturity, that's that synergy of the book of Haggai, where the prophet Haggai came and activated Zerubbabel in government and Joshua in the church. And that was when the people of God rose up and as an ecclesia and built God's house and pushed the devil's agenda back. Mercedes, we got some feedback on that product so far.
Yeah.
We just released it. What are people saying?
We did release it back around Black Friday, and so lots of great reviews. Cora says, so clear and accurate to the Bible. The book of Acts, keep us dangerous. Saley says, I love this teaching. It's past time for a sleepy church to awaken. And then Rich says, I constantly feed on what the Lord pours through you, Lance. Thanks, Rich. So we got lots more up there, but I'm just going to list off three.
I love it. Go to lancewallnau.com/gathering. lancewallnau.com/gathering. It's something like $19. It's the gathering of the dangerous, inspired by my years with Kim Clement, updated for today's delicate, dangerous times. You don't want to miss this. Welcome back to the Lance Wallnau Show. Those of you that are just joining us all over the world from the Real America's Voice audience. And I've got Mercedes Sparks right here with me, and who was, sorry to say, wasting all of her energy in the last show, blocking spammers. We just deleted it off of, I sometimes put it on Facebook. You can catch us on Facebook, by the way, where we put, you can catch us 5 days a week, really, because we're up there all the time, only 1 day a week on Real America's Voice on Saturdays. But go to Lance Wallnau Show podcast. You can get roughly 9 million downloads so far. I'm going to go to this article here. Merrick Garland claims no double standard. Oh, yeah? Oh, yeah? We know differently. According to the Washington Post, not only did the White House and the DOJ try to obscure the scandal from public view, talking about the embarrassing Biden document situation, but Garland appears to have handled the Mar-a-Lago raid much differently than the investigation of Biden. Oh, really? You think that they had, did we have the 20 FBI guys, the SWAT team go in and go through Jill Biden's closet and underwear yet? According to the Washington Post, not only did the White House and DOJ try to obscure the scandal from public view, but they also refused to divulge that the second trove of classified documents were already unearthed at Biden's home in Wilmington, Delaware, at the time that CBS News first contacted the White House about the initial leak of classified documents apparently illegally stored at the Biden Penn Center, compliments of the Chinese Communist Party. Republicans are demanding, according to Breitbart, that the FBI Director Christopher Wray and Attorney General Merrick Garland appear before the House Judiciary Committee on Friday to explain the Department of Justice's actions in raiding former President Donald Trump. Well, good for you. That's what that 5 or 6 extra chairs gives you there, Republicans. You now control the gavel. You can control the narrative. You can create all kinds of opportunities for putting them on their back foot. And Christopher Wray and Merrick Garland got to explain, why exactly did you go to Mar-a-Lago? And, of course, you know the questions they don't want to get. Why isn't the same enforcement, if it's justified with Donald Trump, being utilized with Joe Biden? Early on, Biden's attorneys and Justice Department investigators both thought they had a shared understanding about keeping the matter quiet. You catch that? The Justice Department and the Biden's attorneys? How can you keep it quiet? You're not going to keep anything like that quiet. After the initial discovery on November 2nd, notice, when we're midterms. So you see the midterms, right before, they knew this about before the midterms, but they kept it quiet. If only we had a good leaking source. I don't know what difference it would have made. I think it's a bit of a much ado about nothing regarding documents until it gets to, was there criminal activity that is actually going to be revealed in the Biden archives?
I think that their whole plan's working, which is, I think, and I've heard people speculate about this, they knew that Biden had all these documents months ago, and that when they raided Trump's house, they put him through the ringer first, so that when all this stuff would come out about Biden, that, oh, well, see, everybody does it. I mean, Trump did it, Biden did it, Pence is doing it, but I do think too, I mean, the other thing that lends itself to that is, like, I don't think it's all classified information. I don't think there's like, hey, I got the nuclear codes right here. Hey, here's the super secret stuff. It's like, I think it's mementos. I think it's like, hey, I remember the day I signed this into law and I've got a little scrap of paper documenting it. I think it's things like that. So when we say it's classified, what does that mean? Is it like a birthday card?
I agree. And, just to show how, I listened to more than our own echo chamber. I was listening to the View and Whoopi Goldberg. I wasn't expecting anything enlightening to come up, but she said something. She said there's 3 different levels of classified content. And, like my son Carl here said it during the break, he said, like, one general received on classified channel, happy birthday for his birthday. Does that constitute a violation of the channel diplomacy status of documents? So if there's different levels, at least the American people ought to be able to understand when the left came out and said that Donald Trump had like nuclear codes he was willing to sell from his garage. That kind of stupidity only exists because there's no breakdown as to what are you actually talking about. By the way, it wasn't 6 documents from Biden's house. What we found out was it was 6 containers or six dossiers, or I don't want to use the word dossier anymore, but it was 6 files of documents. So there could be a lot more documents than just a few, but we don't know what level they are because there's 3 levels of classification. To your point,
he's probably actually got stuff, but now it seems like it's all watered down. Like, well, everybody takes documents. I mean,
well, that's what I said.
Why are we making a big deal of this?
That's what I said on yesterday's program, that they went to Mike Pence's place and said, well, do a raid on his place and see, maybe he's got something. And so at least the news cycle will say Trump and Biden and even Mike Pence says, he's got documents. So what I want to do now is I want to cut into something which is a little bit more, it's going to unfold. And of course, it's going to be like clickbait every day because there's so much corruption there to unfold. Like, why were they even looking for the documents in the first place? Because they're trying to do damage control, and what's about to get exposed. Republicans expose Hunter Biden and the deal with the big guy. So that's why there's such a panic attack going on. But there's bigger fish to fry, and I want to look at the World Economic Forum that just took place. I want to take a look at an important theory that is being articulated by Glenn Beck. Can we do that for a second? You guys got the Glenn Beck soundbite? And play that for the audience, because he's pointing something out I want us to catch.
This is cut 8 of what's coming.
What is a polycrisis, and how and when could it happen?
A polycrisis.
We're actually in the midst of one at the moment. It's the set of concurrent cascading risks that happen at the same time. So that's where we are today. That's 2023.
This is something that you're going to hear. Mark my words. If you start hearing about polycrisis, there's global polycrisis going on right now. That is going to be the rallying cry for all kinds of things, including the digital dollar, which I believe will happen or at least pass this year. All because of a polycrisis. That's what they're predicting. Gee. And if they just didn't have anything to do with actually causing these things, it would make me feel so much better.
Now, for those of you watching the video and not listening on the podcast, I don't understand why Glenn has a gigantic white... Reminds me of that the marshmallow guy, or the Michelin tire guy.
The Michelin Man?
The Michelin. It's Michelin. Yes, yeah. The Michelin Man. It's like, what the heck? I could see if he was having a emergency, but he's chosen this. It's like a My Pillow for Mike Lindell right in front of his face. It's like huge. Anyway, for those of you in the podcast, ignore those comments. But I love what Glenn had to say. And what he's saying is very important. And by the way, those of you that are watching live on Facebook, greetings. Share this. Please share this with other people. I believe I'm a victim of text suppression, people. They've demonetized me again on social media. They've wiped out my account on TikTok. They've wiped out my account on YouTube. That's the reason why you got to go to watch the Lance Wallnau Show every day on the podcast. It's the only place you can survive right now with freedom of speech is in a podcast. Everything else, you got to like be a contortionist to talk about certain things you can't talk about. But what Beck is saying is that this demonetization, this is why they don't mind having $300 trillion worth of global world debt. They don't care because they want to see a collapse. Well, they want to see a collapse because the central bankers and the big businesses will be the survivalists, because the money's going to have to be all reconfigured, and then the digital currency with central banking increases the power of totalitarian control. They control you. They control the food supply. They control you. It's all about control, folks, and they honestly believe that the world's problems can be solved if they're in control. And that bothers me. So I don't know if we should do this video 1 or video 2 on I think video 1 on the chaos theory of World Economic Forum. It's 2 minutes, but I want you to catch this. Fox News exposes the globalist plot behind the World Economic Forum, the Antifa riots, and tyranny. That's the title of this. Why? Because when you put together the pandemic, plus the climate crisis, they're trying to make it into a climate crisis. And you listen, just got to say this. Al Gore goes off in this kind of, he looks swelled up, man. He needs to do some. Anyways, Al Gore's like a preacher rant about climate and the ozone layer. None of these guys, even for a moment, mention 2 things. The entire world shut down its industrial capacity for a year and a half with the COVID pandemic. So there was a sabbatical, a forced sabbatical given to all of Mother Nature, so that none of the industrial pollutants actually were operating as they formerly had done. Secondly, what they do not mention is that China has 4.4 billion tons of belching coal into the atmosphere since 2022. 4.4 billion. Just last month, they consumed 390 million tons of coal. You never hear them saying the number one concern we've got is China. They won't touch China because their goal is to control you in the West. Anyway, let's go ahead and play that. And I might cut it off before it's over, but I want you to hear their chaos theory on Fox News exposing.
calls it the chaos theory. He's right. And recently, there's a lot of it happening here in the U.S. We really loved what he had to say yesterday, and we're going to expand on it this morning.
Because it helps explain some of the motivation between stuff that seems haphazard and chaotic, but in the end actually serves a unified purpose. Let's talk about it. Let's go off the wall with some current examples. Let's first start with global warming and climate change. The ultimate tool, and this was revealed to me certainly during the pandemic, but the ultimate motivating tool, I think, for most of humanity is fear. Fear. Absolve me of my fear. And therefore, someone seeking power realizes if somebody is fearful, they'll hand over control.
Absolutely. Rahm Emanuel famously said, never let a crisis go to waste. So if you want to push climate schemes and more control, you have to peddle the idea that it is utter chaos throughout the world. And what a great example this week at the World Economic Forum, where all the elites gathered in their private jets in Davos, where Al Gore and John Kerry peddled that kind of fear. Watch.
Emissions are still going up. All these promises of the last few years to cut emissions are still going up. That's what's boiling the oceans, creating these atmospheric rivers and the rain bombs and causing these waves of climate refugees.
It's pretty extraordinary to sit in a room and come together and actually talk about saving the planet. I mean, it's so almost extraterrestrial.
So these two clips back to back, I think, are fascinating. First of all, Al Gore, literally the fire and brimstone of a preacher preaching apocalypse.
Yes.
And then abutted there to John Kerry describing himself as an extraterrestrial in charge of saving the planet. Be fearful and I will save you. I just want to say this is how obvious it is as a tool and not true belief. These guys flew in G5s. They flew in G5s to Davos to talk about this. They own homes on the ocean.
Hundreds of millions of dollars. He's
Okay,
worth.
cut it off.
Boiling oceans, why are they buying beach?
And they're going to talk about Obama's, oceanfront property and all that stuff. First of all, doesn't Al Gore look a little bit like Bob the Tomato? I mean, he's blowing himself up over there, over this crisis. And I hate seeing people worked up artificially.
He's just trying to take care of one cow at a time. Okay, Lance?
One cow at a time. People are crazy. And then Bob Kerry just reveals. Did I get his name right, Bob Kerry? So Bob Kerry.
John Kerry?
John Kerry. That's right. John Kerry. That's right. John Kerry, not Bob. I knew something was wrong. I knew it wasn't Drew Kerry. Anyway, John Kerry. And so he's up there talking about, look at it. Who would have thought? Who would have thought that we were going to be like, the Fantastic Four or the team is going to save the planet? It's us. It's fallen on our shoulder. It's surreal that we are the rulers of the universe.
I mean, how many plastic ketchup bottles probably are filling up landfills everywhere?
Is that the Heinz fortune?
Yeah.
That's a low blow. That's a low blow Mercedes.
Yeah. Just
to a man of his
equal
distinguished
opportunity
characteristics.
offender here.
But what I want you to really understand, folks, is these guys are serious. They live in their own echo chamber, and they actually are breathing the ether that they are the saviors of the planet and that you are the idiots that need to be managed like cows. And you need to be tagged like a cow. We need to know when you're wandering like a cow. We need to know what your emissions are like a cow because we got to manage you like a cow. And I want to go to this other soundbite, the video chaos theory, Antifa and vaccines, because the point they're making is that these independent events serve in their chaotic unfolding to combine towards a great reset. Remember that word, great reset? That's Davos. Or build back better. That's Davos. And now it's Klaus Schwab saying the world is cooperation. Cooperation. Okay, let's see about cooperation there, Mr. Goldfinger from James Bond, and play this for us.
Talk about some more chaos that was front and center in our political sphere, mostly in 2020, but in Atlanta just last night. Antifa, Black Lives Matter, left-wing radical groups taking to violence on the streets in the hopes And oftentimes that fear leads to extortion. It's if you don't do what we want, more of this will happen.
Okay, now I think this one is tied to what Bongino was talking about as well, when the fear is often personified by those who disagree with you. There's a reason that you should be fearful, and it's because of those people who believe differently than you. When it comes to Antifa and BLM, the enemy is made clear. It is the racist. It is the bad person, not the bad idea, the bad person on the other side of you that must be controlled.
Yes, that must be controlled. And in the case of this, it was the police officers who needed to be reined in and defunded. I mean, think about how quickly we went from defund the police being this radical idea that seemed on the fringe to the point where major metropolitan city councils were pushing to defund police departments. And then you get more of this.
Chaos. More chaos. How about this? If the ideological opponent is the bad person, if they're the science denier, if they're the racist, what about when they're actually infectious? Those who disagree with you are so bad, they can infect you.
And they don't even know it. They will kill you unless you, based on very limited information and science that we won't reveal to you, you must take the jab. So COVID's a great example. In fact, that's a lot of what Dan was talking about yesterday. Here's Joe Biden, Anthony Fauci, Rochelle Walensky on vaccines and masks as a reminder.
We're here with a simple message. Get vaccinated. And if you're fully vaccinated, get one more COVID shot.
People who are vaccinated, they can feel safe that they are not going to get infected. I want to make sure people keep their masks on. I think the idea of taking masks off, in my mind, is really not something we should even be considering.
We do encourage all Americans to wear a well-fitting mask, and that recommendation is not going to change.
It was maximum fear, Will.
So, yeah, be fearful. The zombies, those who are racist, those who are infectious, those who deny science are somewhere outside the walls. So lock yourself in the ideological prison, and we as the wardens will help you control, will give you safety. It's the chaos that leads to power, which leads to control, which leads to their self-justification. It really is a tool that weaves its way through, I think, every news item.
All the while you are told that you're crazy or you're dangerous for not trusting the science that they won't reveal. And the misinformants in the midst of all of that who are canceled or kicked off of social media, later on confirmed to be correct, but already told that they're insane. Or blocked and pushed out of the conversation to begin with. They want chaos so they can get control.
That was an interesting segment with Will and Pete. And, you know, they're never going to be diamond and silk. That classic combination is never going to be replicated.
No, but
again.
they're like mini Tuckers. And then I just got to say, we got to bring wearing suits back for men, because the one suit, people on the podcast can't see it, but the one blue suit was so sharp. And I was like, I wish more men wore suits. It just looks really sharp. In the financial industry, it's still alive, and sometimes at church.
Well, you know, that's a thought. Now, I'm thinking about what they were talking about, if you don't mind me saying so. I'm glad that they brought up the fact that Antifa at least has a dress code. They're all dressed in black, fashionably in black from head to toe.
I know where those guys go.
They're sticking with the company brand.
They took like a sabbatical for a bit, and now they're back.
Yeah, well, you know why they were gone, as Tucker pointed out recently? Because the Democrats are in office. And why do they come back out? Well, maybe a couple of reasons. This could be they might be kind of, you know, beating the drums at the same time for Biden to go, and they're going to kind of like create a groundswell, get Kamala in, so that she can have a little bit of time there to get her presidency in order for her run. But the Antifa Black Lives Matter thing, what I want to point out that nobody really talks about is, did you notice that they never attack the FBI headquarters or the CIA? I guarantee you have FBI and CIA down there in Atlanta. They always go after the local police because the Democrats hate the local authorities. They want to have control. And the Democrats, by the way, are in control, which is why they attack the police. It's never the government. It's always the police that they go after.
Yeah, well, they're all busy out dressed in black gear.
Well, and you know, like Tucker says, why does somebody ever go after who's funding and organizing them? Because certainly somebody's putting together the wardrobe department. Somebody's running the thing.
Exactly.
So,
like, who hands out all the pink hats? Where does everybody get those pink hats? Remember that day in like DC, there were like millions of pink hats. You're like,
well,
who?
that was clearly somebody was in on that deal. There's so much we could cover. The whole point about the poly crisis is that By the way, the incident that happened in Atlanta, you're just looking at the violence or the destruction of property and stuff, and the police, because a policeman was killed. Heard some idiotic journalist saying how you can't call these violent protests because nobody's getting hurt. It was started because a policeman was shot by an Antifa radical. And so the policeman shot back and killed the radical. Well, you'll never make that mistake in Atlanta. You shoot one of us, we'll come after you, and we'll riot through the city. It's pure lawlessness, what the Bible talks about in terms of lawlessness. But there's a yearning, I think, in America to see this stuff crushed because we watched a whole summer of it. We've witnessed the illogical prosecution of January 6 people where none of this happened. It was all made look like it was happening, but there was no burning buildings, no people with guns shooting police. There was a lot of manipulated stories that came out, but it was basically, it was the protesters that were killed and had heart attacks. So what I want you to catch is this. The narrative is no longer working. It's no longer sticking. It's no longer working. That's good news. The left is losing it in terms of the narrative. We're going to be back again with part 2.
Did you enjoy this latest episode? Please remember to share it with your friends, because the more knowledge you have, the better equipped you are to navigate the world.
With the instability happening in the market right now, and with inflation going up and the dollar in its seems to be like in its free fall, we're watching the stock market make some terrible reckoning adjustments. And where are people going? Well, when cash is unstable, people put their money in a store of value, gold and silver and precious metals. What I didn't know till recently, and I should have known it, is that you can take your 401k and you can actually convert it and put it into an account that has silver and gold. That means that your 401k retirement savings is going to be in silver and gold. So as the dollar starts to get unstable or decline, your gold and silver value is guarding your retirement. Now, this is the tax-exempt strategy that Birch Gold can advise you on. You want to go to lancewallnau.com/Birch. Talk to one of their consultants, download their report, and learn how you can convert a 401k or your retirement plan into gold and silver accounts, secure and protect your money and have peace of mind. lancewallnau.com/Birch. Download the report, talk to the consultant. There's no obligation. That's what I'm recommending people do.